I have a very hot take, right? Along these lines, and for fear of being
T-shirt coming soon?
Probably, right? For fear of
T-shirt
being
coming
cancelled,
soon.
I won't say it, right? But like, there is a sect in our communities, right, with an agenda of like oversharing and like putting in our faces, right, to the point, and to Jude's point, right, where it then is now affecting children's outlooks, right? Because they're even pushing it to kids, where it's like kids need to be free to be exposed to this, and it's like that's not true, bro. Right? Like, because argument's sake, right? You have there's an article I was reading the other day where this man, right, this woman, sorry, right, when she was young, when she was like 12 or something, right, I identify as a man, blah blah blah, mastectomy, right? Like, just went whole hog and was like Jack, and it's like, oh no, it's fine here. And at the time, it's like, no, freedom of expression, it must happen, whatever. Then she got older and she's like, that was a mistake. I did it. And that shit never used to happen without the internet and without just a push of all of this shit, and especially pushing to be like, bro, kids don't know what they want. They're children, right? Like,
They're still figuring it out.
Yeah,
right.
they can just take anything.
Exactly.
Do you know what's wild is that what you're saying, I'm so tempted to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm like,
it's so tempting.
I'm so tempted.
But I think it's a whole other conversation.
It's almost one of those conversations where you need to prep. However,
Right.
if you want to do it, we can do it.
But I think I need to prep for it because, like, what's interesting to me is that it's not necessarily like the fact that it's coming off of the topic of oversharing on the internet, and the fact that that is from that. You know what I mean? Like that's very interesting.
And I think that the other thing for me is that it's coming from the conversation about the periods, which I think might be two different conversations, honestly. Even just on the extent to the way that they're damaging.
But are they different conversation? Because like it's about normalizing things that people would otherwise believe to be abnormal.
Yeah.
And so like having more information of those things out there and having more people forwarding a certain message would normalize it.
Hold on, right? So are we saying here that sharing information about taboos, right?
Yeah.
Is fair?
I think there is a level of it where
I hear.
So if I'm sharing then information about me having a relationship with my kwan, which is taboo, right? If I'm sharing information about incest, is that then?
Okay. And they do.
Which is, but for me,
that's
really wild.
But we've also done that because we've normalized, say for example, things like polygamy, polyamory. They're becoming more of a hot topic these days because we have TV shows. But it's always been a thing that was happening, but now you have more people identifying as polyamorous because you're exposed to more and things have been normalized a lot more.
So for starters, polygamy is not something that's starting to happen now. It's probably happening way less now than it used to. Yeah. So in that regard, I think that's a
sounds so disappointing.
I mean, polygamy is the best thing to ever happen to people.
Sorry, to which people?
Wait.
Who is
You down another rabbit hole.
You as a man, please continue.
Because otherwise,
we'll continue afterwards.
Here's the thing about the difference for me between the periods thing and what you are sort of talking about, which is around more like sexual stuff, is that I don't think there's any harm in people seeing periods. It's just disgusting. More than anything. And you know, when I say it's disgusting, it's because I'm a pretty squeamish person. Like blood is disgusting to me, whether it's coming out of your arm or whatever. So that if people can say this is the actual harm that comes from that, if I see that on my timeline, I might unfollow you. But it's not like, oh, so I should report your account or whatever. That's the kind of like operation you're running on your Twitter. But I don't know if there's any specific harm, which is different from what you're talking about, which is teaching kids about sex. Yeah. I think there's harm in teaching kids about sex.
Is there?
So
yeah, I think so.
It has to come, because then you end up with girls who are 10 who are pregnant, right? But
are they pregnant because they're being taught about sex, or because they're not being taught about sex?
But also people shouldn't be taught about sex on Twitter. I think people should be taught about sex in their homes and in their schools.
Now you're coming to the point I was talking about. To say, is it your place? Because just because you've got a phone, a smartphone, and you're going through stuff, doesn't mean you're an expert to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So you can't talk about sex because there are certain families that don't want their child exposed to those things
sex.
at that level, right? Then yes, you're teaching us about the period, but there are certain people also don't want their children exposed at that level.
But why?
No. The why is not for you to answer, right? We come from different communities.
Yeah.
We come from different.
Yeah.
Someone raised in America is very different from someone raised in Jewish, right?
Fair.
But they are all now on the internet, global citizens and whatever netizens, right? And you are putting out your content. Unfortunately, that child is going to interact with that content and start asking questions that their parents are not yet.
But so where do we draw the line between what I post and what I'm teaching your kids? Because those are two different things. Because now you're going to tell me that
Because
I can't post
raising
about
your kids
cars
is not
because
my
you don't.
responsibility.
So
what
I wanted
to
to
me.
then say is your question is very broad and difficult to answer because it has to come from a certain context. Like you're gonna ask from an African perspective, where do you draw the line? From an American perspective, from a conservative perspective, where do you draw the line? Because there's no one size fits all.
No, it's not a one size fits all.